All right, welcome to this explainer where we're going to dive deep into the staggering, sometimes downright terrifying data behind modern parenthood. Okay, let's jump right in. Picture this. It's 10 p.m., you're scrolling on your phone, looking at a coworker's baby announcement, and somewhere in the back of your brain, this little voice just starts doing math you absolutely didn't ask it to do. You start tallying up diapers, daycare, and hospital bills. Well, today we are going to validate that little voice and look at the actual numbers of having a child in 2026.
Society is constantly telling us, oh, you'll just figure it out. We see these highly curated social media posts, the cute baby socks, the perfect aesthetic nurseries, and we're told you'll never be completely financially ready, so you should just go for it. But when you look past those Instagram expectations, you are faced with a totally different, intensely mathematical reality. It's a reality filled with calculators, massive spreadsheets, and for a lot of people, deep financial anxiety. And let me tell you, you are not broken for feeling this way. You're just looking at the math. And that brings us to the ultimate question, the one that's kind of quietly breaking everyone's brain right now. Who can actually afford to have a kid in 2026? It's the question nobody really wants to ask out loud, and it is certainly the math nobody wants to put on a baby shower invitation. So today, we're going to look directly at those actual numbers, run the real math against the societal expectations, and just see what falls out.
Now, get a load of this number, $334,418. And actually, scratch that. The craziest part is that this isn't even the high-end estimate. According to LendingTree's April 2026 report, this is the conservative average cost of raising one child to age 18 in the U.S. That's up almost 28% from just 3 years prior. Practically speaking, that means you've got to find somewhere between $17,000 and $23,000 every single year for 18 straight years. And spoiler alert, guys, that is before we even talk about college. To put that into perspective, let's look at the median household income in the U.S., which sits at $83,730. That's a number that has essentially flatlined since 2019 when you adjust for inflation. So what we are now asking the average American family to do is spend up to a quarter, 25%, of their entire lifetime gross income on raising just one child. And remember, that's gross income. That is before the IRS even shows up to take their cut. If that ratio sounds like a glaring math error to you, well, congratulations, you're paying attention. Let's dive into Section 1, Birth and Unpaid Leaves. So how do we actually reach that massive $250,000+ figure? Let's walk through the chronological gauntlet, because these costs, they compound relentlessly over 18 years. It's not just one big bill at the end. It's a constant, evolving financial gauntlet, starting from the literal, physical act of just getting the human out of the body, moving through infant logistics, daycare, and finally culminating in higher education. Let's start at day 0. A routine delivery with employer-based health insurance still averages almost $3,000 out of pocket. Need a C-section? The gross cost jumps to almost $29,000. And if anything goes sideways, an average NICU stay is over $71,000. But here's the real kicker. Because America is the only developed nation without a national paid leave program, taking a responsible 12-week unpaid FMLA leave means the median worker loses roughly $14,400 in wages. Add the hospital bill and lost wages together, and a normal birth costs a median worker roughly $17,000, literally before the kid even eats its first solid food. Moving right along to Section 2, the childcare crisis. Okay, so you survived the birth, you bought the estimated 25,500 diapers you're going to need in year 1, but then you immediately hit a brick wall. You face the single line item that is breaking middle-class families clean in half. Infant daycare has jumped 35% since 2019. The national average is now over $13,000 a year. And if you live in a major city like Washington, D.C., it averages an eye-watering $24,243. So here's the absolutely crucial point. In 41 states plus D.C., we've built a system where it is now mathematically more expensive to drop off a 1-year-old for the day than it is to send an 18-year-old to an in-state 4-year public university. And yet, young couples are just told to, figure it out. Let's look at some real people to ground this data. Meet Jock and Emily. They're an upper-middle-class couple in Denver making a combined $156,000 a year. On paper, they are doing everything right. But after taxes, their $2,400 rent, $1,950 daycare bill, groceries, cars, student loans, and insurance, their fixed costs eat up almost everything. They are left with a terrifying $200 margin at the end of the month to cover all unexpected expenses, clothing, and date nights. Just $200. They make well above the median, yet they have less margin in their budget than their parents had on a single income back in 1985. Which brings us to Section 3, the two-income trap. Now, you might look at Jack and Emily's agonizing monthly math and think, well, obviously one parent should just stay home to dodge that $2,000 daycare bill. But wait, that triggers a completely different, deeply systemic trap. Bankrate's 2025 data reveals what we call the motherhood penalty. Full-time working mothers now earn 35% less than full-time working fathers, and this gap is actually widening because when one parent, and statistically it's almost always the mother, leaves the workforce to avoid childcare costs, she isn't just losing a year of income. No, she sacrifices years of compounding retirement, Social Security base, and overall career trajectory. As economists note, it is literally a two-income trap where families are running as fast as they can just to stay in place. Next up, Section 4, the hidden cost inflators. Okay, let's say you miraculously survive the daycare years. Your kid finally hits public school, which is free. You can relax, right? Wrong. This is exactly when the invisible costs of parenthood secretly inflate the rest of your budget. Adding a kid forces you into massive, silent upgrades across your entire life. Moving from a single to a family health premium averages a jump of thousands of dollars a year. The worker share alone is up 26% in 5 years. Then there's housing. You start looking for decent school districts, which come with massive property tax premiums. You bite the bullet and upgrade to a minivan. And if you want to fund a college degree in 2044 without your kid drowning in debt, you're facing the daunting reality of saving $300 to $700 a month into a 529 plan starting the month they are born. Finally, let's look at Section 5, listening to the math. When the honest baseline to simply raise a kid in a major metro area is roughly $500,000 before college, the demographic consequences are absolutely impossible to ignore. People are finally sitting down, running the numbers, and making huge life decisions based on them. And this number right here, 53.1, is the result. The U.S. general fertility rate just hit an all-time low in CDC data in 2025 at 53.1 births per 1,000 women. We are having fewer babies per capita right now than during the Great Depression. Why? Because surveys show 70% of Americans are confirming that raising children is simply too expensive. This isn't just a generational complaint or a passing vibe. This is millions of Americans concluding that the math simply doesn't work.
Now, to be completely fair, the government has noticed this collapsing birth rate, and they have implemented some objective policy changes. The child tax credit was bumped up to $2,200 per child. The dependent care FSA limit was finally raised to $7,500, and there is a new Trump account that provides a $1,000 federal index fund contribution for newborns to grow until they turn 18. So these are tangible, statistical interventions currently on the books attempting to move the needle. But when we impartially compare those U.S. interventions on a global scale, it's quite the contrast. Our peer nations in the OECD average 18.5 weeks of paid leave and spend about $14,000 per child per year on daycare. The United States, we spend about $500. That means the U.S. spends roughly 3% of what our peer nations spend on the single most expensive line item of modern parenthood. We are basically shifting almost the entire financial burden directly onto the shoulders of young parents. So, wrapping up this explainer, here is what I really want you to take away from all of this. The smartest financial decision a lot of Americans are making right now is the one nobody posts on Instagram. Know that you are totally allowed to look at these insane numbers and opt out, wait, or downsize your expectations. A spreadsheet cannot guilt you. The coworker, the aunt, the TikTok mom, literally none of them are signing your daycare check. The math is screaming, and if you choose to listen to it and wait or have one kid instead of 3, you don't have to be like everyone else. The question is, are you going to let societal pressure dictate your life, or are you going to run your own numbers?